Welcome back to the Leadership Riot. Here's where we drag leadership culture out of the boardroom, we throw it under the lighting, and we ask the questions everyone else is too nervous to touch.
So today's riot, courage. Not the motivational poster version, not the believe in yourself version, not the run into a burning building courage. We're talking about real courage at work. Courage sounds inspiring right up until there's an actual consequence that is attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, and yet courage is where some of the best leadership, the strongest cultures, and the biggest personal growth actually come from. So, welcome to the riot.
Our last riot was titled Brilliant Assholes, and thank you. We got some really good feedback. But we talked about what brilliant assholes look like, the damage they cause, why organizations keep tolerating them. And dealing with them, that often really takes courage. Here's the thing. Courage means different things to different people. For some people, like myself, courage is sometimes just speaking up in a meeting. For others, courage is saying no or giving hard feedback or taking feedback and not being defensive about it or admitting, I totally just screwed that all up.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd really like listeners to be thinking about this right now. What does courage mean to you? Do people immediately think courage means some kind of dramatic act of confrontation? Can courage actually be incredibly quiet, like picking your battles quiet or choosing to show courage in private?
Yeah, courage can be doing the right thing when nobody's watching or refusing to compromise values. That's a biggie. Or holding somebody accountable or ending a toxic conversation. Being first to try something that nobody's done before. Wow, that's pretty courageous. And so, Dom, when you hear courage at work, what does it mean to you?
Honestly, for me, it's willingness to speak the truth when silence would be easier. And I think courage is tied directly to integrity. It's the moment where your values are about to be compromised and you decide not to sell your soul to stay comfortable. What about you? What would you say?
Well, for me, this one's an interesting one. Courage is knowing it's not about me.
What does that mean?
Well, it's like sometimes people think courage is ego driven, like, look how bold I am. And that's how I feel about it sometimes. Not me personally, but courage, real courage often sounds more like this isn't about me. This is about what's right. And that's the difference between performance and integrity.
Well, and there are levels to courage. Speaking up in the moment takes courage, but only owning your own behavior, different level of courage.
100%.
It's saying something like, I handled that poorly. I damaged trust. I became part of the problem. Or showing the vulnerability to admit that you're wrong, to own the impact of your actions and let people see the emotion behind the lesson. Most people would rather defend themselves forever than do that. Real
Yeah,
courage is not arrogance, it's not certainty or having all of the answers. It's for me, it's the self-awareness to face your own flaws and the vulnerability to let others see them too.
exactly. Holding people accountable takes courage too, especially when everyone else is avoiding it. It's not just employees either, it's leaders too.
Especially leaders. Leadership courage for me is not motivational speeches or inspirational LinkedIn posts. It's making decisions that may hurt in the short term because they're actually the right ones in the long term. Let's really riot here for a second.
Okay, let's effing go. Okay, I don't have enough courage to really F-bomb on this pod.
The ultimate leadership courage test, terminating the brilliant asshole.
So that's a mic drop moment.
Courageous leadership means refusing to let high performance subsidize a toxic culture. When leaders finally stop trading integrity for output, something really powerful happens. You stop paying the invisible asshole tax across your organization. Team trust improves, psychological safety improves, collaboration improves, and suddenly your best people stop fantasizing about quitting every Sunday night.
That decision can really create short-term pain, right?
Absolutely. Revenue might dip, Executives might panic. Some people will question the decision, but long term, you're protecting culture, you're protecting trust and people, which usually protects performance as well.
So those are really brilliant points. I'm wondering, hey, can we chat now about what stops people from being courageous? Like any guesses on what one of the number one reasons is?
Oh, I would absolutely say self-preservation and fear.
Ding ding. Of course, you're correct, and I'm not surprised. People are constantly calculating risk. Will this hurt my career? Am I going to get fired? Will leadership, turn on me? Will I get excluded? And honestly, sometimes those fears are valid. Some organizations absolutely punish honesty.
Yeah. And I also think that, the way that we're raised also shapes courage more than we realize.
That's really interesting. Like, tell me more about that.
So were you brought up to challenge things? Were you allowed to question authority, to change systems? Or do you come from a background which basically said, keep your head down, don't rock the boat, go along, be agreeable, and don't cry or don't show your emotions?
Mm.
That kind of conditioning follows us straight into the workplace.
See, here's a part that I think matters as well. Courage creates possibility. So every meaningful change in culture usually starts with somebody willing to go first. To me, that really feels very courageous. One person willing to challenge a toxic norm is a good example, or to challenge a proposed strategy.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, one leader willing to admit that they are wrong, or one employee willing to ask the uncomfortable question that everyone else avoided. And courage is contagious. It just takes one, and then it kind of has a knock-on effect.
That's so very true. That's the positive side I think people forget. Courage gives other people permission to stop hiding.
Yeah. And here's the thing for me, leadership courage, it does get complicated and it is challenging. Especially at leaders, we sometimes have to represent decisions we personally disagree with.
Oh, I've been there, and it's really a brutal tension.
And employees don't always see that complexity. So sometimes courage as a leader is saying to yourself, I personally wouldn't make this decision, but I have a responsibility to my organization to lead through it honestly.
And sometimes courage is admitting, I don't know, or actually, I can't share that with you, or, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. And I'm just kidding on that back end part. But this is transparency, but it's got borders.
Yeah. And I want to make a quick distinction here. For me, not all courage is good leadership. So, taking reckless risks at the expense of the business, not courage. That's ego for me. Or impulsiveness disguised as bravery. Courage without judgment can damage teams, businesses, can damage trust. So, real courage still considers impact.
You know what I think is the most underrated form of courage?
What's that?
Saying no. No to bad behavior, no to compromising my values, absolutely no to burnout, no to unethical decisions, and sometimes no to opportunities that require something that requires you to become someone that you're not going to respect.
Well, that's real courage because people know there's often a price attached to it.
Oh, that's good.
The hard truth about courage, you want to know?
Yeah, maybe.
The hard truth people really don't want to hear is that sometimes the culture is the problem, not your communication style, not your resilience, not your mindset. Some organizations fundamentally punish honesty because honesty threatens power.
And I've seen no amount of perfectly worded feedback that changes that ever.
hmm So, courage at work is really about balance, balancing honesty with strategy, integrity with awareness.
I'd add speaking up without becoming reckless and understanding this, that sometimes courage means challenging the system. And sometimes courage means deciding the system isn't worth sacrificing yourself for.
So, here's this week's riot question. Where in your career are you protecting your comfort more than your integrity?
That's interesting. And I think, leaders, this is where you need to be honest. Have you built a culture where people can challenge you? Or is it just that they've learned to survive you? That does not sound fun.
Well, and silence in organization is rarely agreement.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, isn't it fear with a calendar invite?
Okay, I think we've run out the topic of courage at work well in this riot, don't you think?
I do. I think it's time to say, see you at the next Leadership Riot, where the conversations are uncomfortable because they're way overdue.
See you at the next riot.